So today, we're going to study chapter 9. And if you were going to put a title on chapter 9, it's The Way of Wisdom. So what's the way of something? It's the way. You know, there's some play on words. Some of the sci-fi movies, the Star Wars spin-offs, they say, you know, this is the way. What are they meaning? The way of the truth. That's what Josh said. It's, you know, 1 Corinthians talks about let our conversation. What's conversation? It's the way we live, right? The way we do things. The way that Christians should live, Josh said. So if we are thinking about the way of something, I kind of think of it like an interstate, if you will. If you want to go to California without getting on an airplane, how are you going to go? You don't take a road, right? Or a train. That'd be pretty cool if we could ride a train from... There is a train in Lebanon. We could ride from Lebanon to California. Boy, I don't know. Sounds pretty good, but once I play that through in my mind, I don't know that I could do that. But we would have to have some way, some vessel, some transportation, right? That's what it's teaching in chapter 9 about wisdom. The way of wisdom. We would say it similar to rules and regulations. Is there any HR people in here? There's a lot of people in here that have that understanding of HR. In your employment, HR kind of gives us the way the companies think. It has to be this certain way, correct? So that's what chapter 9 is teaching us. So how do we apply that wisdom today? And then in the latter part of chapter 9, it has another sharp contrast because it's folly. So what's folly? What is folly?
You don't pay attention to what the outcome is, you do it because
She said you don't pay attention. You don't do it a certain way. In the moment, it kind of sounds good without any consequences. Kind of, oh, well, let's just do it. Folly is completely opposite of wisdom. Solomon said in Ecclesiastes, everything under the sun is what? Vain, right? Is vain and folly about the same thing? I'm sorry? Opposite. So what is folly? What is wisdom and what is folly? That's what chapter 9 is going to teach us, I think. So let's begin and we'll just read it and we'll talk about it and try to learn what the wisdom is for us today. Give me just a second. I know Proverbs is in my Bible. Proverbs chapter 9. The way of wisdom. Wisdom has built her house. She has hewn out 7 pillars. She has slaughtered her meat. She has mixed her wine. She has also furnished her table. She has sent out her maidens. She cries out from the highest places of the city. Whoever is simple, let him turn in here. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, come eat of my bread and drink of my wine I have mixed. Forsake the foolishness, and live, and go in the way of understanding. He who corrects a scoffer gets shame for himself, and he who rebukes a wicked man only harms himself. Do not corrupt a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Give instruction to the wise man, and he will be still wiser. Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. For by me your days will be multiplied, and years of life will be added unto you. If you are wise for yourself. And if you scoff, you will bear it alone. That's kind of the first context of chapter 9, is the way of the wisdom. And then verse 12 talks about the way of the folly. So it'll go from 13 to 18, and it'll talk about the folly. So again, the Proverbs writer is comparing wisdom, and he calls her a she. So it is describing what wisdom is doing. Wisdom has what? Built her house. She has given out she has hewed out 7 pillars, slaughtered the meat, mixed the wine, furnished the table, sent out the maidens. She cries out from the highest place of the city. What's that teaching us? She prepared the meat. She hewed out 7 pillars. She made the meat. She sent out her maidens. A lot of preparation, right? A lot of preparation. So wisdom is prepared. So when you think about the 7 pillars, or built a house, or slaughtered the meat, is it not teaching some stability? Obviously, the preparation is there. It has to be. But is it not teaching us that in God, if we seek wisdom, we can be stable? It is, right? It has to be. We think about when those of you that know how to build houses or know that concept, where does it begin? Where does it begin? Has to be at the bottom, right? The foundation. It has to be a good foundation. Because if you don't have the foundation, everything else is going to fall. So using that analogy, is wisdom a good foundation? Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. It has to be. So in order for us to be stable in our thinking, we have to seek wisdom. That's what the first 2 verses is teaching us. So what's the 7 pillars? I read some of this. There is a lot of commentaries on Proverbs, obviously. There's a lot of thought what the 7 pillars are. Sometimes I think, well, my opinion is as good as theirs. I think it's just as simple as teaching what we've talked about, the stability. It's saying, okay, I've thought about this preparation and I've made it strong enough for any circumstance. Some people think the 7 pillars are the fear of God, instruction. I can't remember them. That's what I get for not writing them down. I don't know that that's what it's talking about. I think it's talking about being able to say it's built right. It's built correctly. That's what it is. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a very good point. He said that the 7 is complete. All through Scripture, the number 7 shows completeness. So the preparation in the first 2 verses shows the completeness of what happened, the 7 pillars. That's exactly right. It has to be. So God has given us everything that we need to be stable. Why did it say that she did this? The wisdom went through this list. Is it not that we have to seek it out? There's only one person that I know that didn't work hard to get wisdom, and that was Solomon. Now, he sought it, he prayed for it, and God gave it to him. How do we get wisdom today? Study the Bible. That's it. How else do we get wisdom? Is there another way? There's really not. Josh said it very simply. Study the Bible. So, okay, how do we do that? What's the application for us? Do I study to help you study in this class setting? Absolutely. Do you study to help me teach this class? Do you study to read? Have you ever been put in a situation in our everyday walks of life and you go, I wonder what's going on? You ever try to seek that out and study? I think we have, right? That's how we apply it. So once we apply it, then we think, I'm a little wiser today. We don't actually broadcast that, I don't think. We don't wear t-shirts that says, I'm wiser today than I was yesterday. Takes away the humility, right? But in our mind, we figure it out. Have you ever seen someone, the light come on? You're trying to give them instruction, or you're talking with them, or you're studying, and you see it in their eyes? What happens? Their whole countenance changes, right? Oh, I got it. I got it. That's what wisdom is teaching about the preparation and the completeness. The good stability is, okay, I've got it. Now I've got to keep it. The other chapters that we talked about taught us that we once we get it, if we don't work at keeping it, we don't lose it in anything. So when God created wisdom, He created it to be a work in progress, if you will. Does that make sense? Because we're never going to be the wisest of everything. And we may be wise in certain areas, we may be an expert in whatever, but it breeds learning. We always have to be doing better. Comments or questions? So, in verse 4, whoever is simple, let him turn in here. As for him who lacks understanding, she says to him, come eat of my bread and drink of my wine I have mixed. Forsake foolishness and live, and go in the way of understanding. Who's wisdom talking to? If you're simple, turn in here. Come and eat of my bread, drink of the mixed wine, the preparation. Who is that?
The unwise.
The unwise. The lost. Could it be you and I? I think I could raise my hand in that question right there. Hey, if you're simple, come. What is it teaching? The more we learn, the more we want, right? If you thirst after righteousness, that's a New Testament application. All through the Gospels, if you hunger and thirst after righteousness. Do you just eat one time physically and you're never hungry again? I mean, some of us can eat and still be hungry. It's just the nature of it, right? So what am I trying to say? So if we prepare and we have that stability and it's complete, now we're in a situation that we've got some wisdom, but I want a little more. Get a little more, I want some more wisdom. Now, I'm not teaching greed at all. I'm not teaching that you have a bad attitude to get more wisdom. I'm just saying that she's saying we're simple. And I don't mean to be offensive at all. I'm saying we have to be willing to learn. Our heart has to be receptive of the instruction, right? So in verse 3, she says, she cries out from the highest places of the city. Wisdom is crying out from the highest places in the city. Come and eat. You that are simple, turn in here. Come and learn. Wisdom says, I got you. How does it feel to know that someone has your back? That's a pretty good feeling, right? If someone has your back, you don't have to worry about it, right? I used to have a friend, and I'd say to him, "Hey, I'll go shoulder to shoulder with you. I got you." That's really not right, because he told me, "Hey, I got you back. I'll go back to back with you." We've got it covered that way. That's what wisdom does for us. Is wisdom hard to obtain? I'm sorry? Medium. It kind of is medium, isn't it? Some things are pretty easy to grasp, some are not. I think that may be what she's saying. Look at a verse right here with me. Verse 9. Give instruction to a wise man, and he will be still wiser. Showing growth, correct? Teach a just man, and he will increase in learning. Wisdom is instruction and increase in learning. When do we stop learning wisdom? Josh said we never stop. We don't, do we? In our physical jobs, in our secular employment, do we stop learning? We don't. Even if you've been in a company for 30 years, you still learn, right? The question is, why? Why do we do that? Why do we continue to strive to be better in our particular professions? To stay on top. Is it an attitude to continue to be wiser? It is, isn't it? I'm going to choose to be wiser today than I was yesterday. And here's the tools. I think that's what Solomon's teaching when he applies the wisdom to 7 pillars, or the meats being prepared. Come and eat of the bread. It's all showing progress. It's not just a one-time deal, right? So chapter 9, the first 6 verses, is teaching us, I think the hinge is to keep going forward. To keep thinking about, I can do a little better. Keep seeking. Keep looking for it. That's exactly right. Okay, let's look at verse 8. Do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. Is that teaching not to ever talk to a scoffer? What's a scoffer? How's that word used? I don't use it every day in my everyday speech. But what's a scoffer, Jason? Put you on the spot. What's a scoffer? Someone that makes fun of. I agree with that. Kind of, you see a couple of people, if I walk over to Victor and I'm like, what are you thinking? You're probably automatically thinking I'm talking about somebody that I shouldn't, right? Because it's a secret and we're in a public situation. I didn't say anything to him, by the way. I kind of relate it to when I was refereeing high school basketball. Neither coach liked me very well. Depending on the call that I made, 50% of the time I was wrong no matter what happened. I told a coach one time, I said, yeah, but I'm 100% official. He crossed his arms and he looked at me and he went, okay. But I've often told coaches, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I kind of look at that as a scoffer. The attitude behind it is wisdom is saying you don't need to teach or try to love. Wait, no, that's not right. You don't need to spend your energy when it's to the point and all they're going to do is make fun. If it's their attitude is 100% all the time making fun or not listening. They're know-it-alls. Is that when we shake the dust off of our sandals? I'm asking. Because I struggle with verse 8. Because the commandment is, what's the Great Commission? Go into all the world and what? Preach the gospel. Go to all nations. Who is the word all? It has to have the scoffers in there, right? Is that not right? So how do I go to the scoffer and say, you need to learn wisdom? And verse 8 says, don't do that because they're going to hate you. I think that's a good verse. Hold on just a minute. Let's go there and let's read it. Right. Russell said at the beginning of his comment, he said that it's a good way to look at it. That command is to go and to preach and go and teach. But we don't do the converting. We don't do the believing. So once you get to that point, it's an attitude behind that. So that's a good way to apply verse 8 is, I'm going to go to everybody. The scoffers are not going to listen to it, but the wise are going to get wiser. That's where the understanding comes in. How do we know when we're at that point? We can pretty much read people sometimes. I think the truth is easily recognized. And people work really hard at trying to fake it, and a lot of times. So verse 8 is teaching us, don't get your feelings hurt if a scoffer makes fun of you. And I'm the first in line to take things personal. Well, why didn't he listen to me? Was it something I said? Was it something I did? I struggle with that maybe not on a daily basis, but I struggle with that because I want everybody happy. Well, why is he making fun of me? I just told him. So I think the application for us is, for me, okay, I can't worry about him making fun of me. He has the information. It's his choice at this point. Now the love behind it and the attitude is completely different. If I go in the wrong attitude, that's on me. Okay? But I can't control his hate for that. That's the stability of wisdom, is it not? That's the completeness of it. It has to be. But then the next part of verse 8, do not correct a scoffer, lest he hate you. Rebuke a wise man, and he will love you. What's rebuke? Is it correction? You ever heard the words corrective? constructive criticism. You ever heard those words? I don't know that I like them. Do y'all?
It goes back to what you said earlier. It's not what you said.
Yes, ma'am. She reiterated that it's not what we say, it's how we say it. Now, if we're speaking the truth and we have the love, that's where it's going to come. We may do like what did I just say? Constructive, there it is. Whew. Constructive criticism once we figure out that the love and the truth was spoken to us. Then we're going to change, right? I didn't like to be told that I needed to shoot a free throw a different way. Because in my mind, I could make them. It's 15 feet away. The goal's always 10 feet. Nobody's guarding me. I can make them. My coach told me, he said, when you can shoot them 97% and make 9 out of every 10 shots, you can shoot them any way you want to. Until then, you're shooting them my way. We learned to shoot free throws the same way in the 5th grade. And when I was a junior, we shot 88% as a team from the free throw line. That's pretty good. That, to me, is what the growth process of wisdom is. Getting your own way out of it, learning to what God has told us. Questions or comments? Okay, verse 10. We've heard these words before. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. So He has told us what wisdom's done, the completeness of the preparation. There's a lot of stability there. We have to be able to understand and grow. And now He says, the fear of the Lord is the what? It's not wisdom, is it? The fear of the Lord is what? The beginning of wisdom. So what's the beginning? It's got to start, right? You got to get it in gear. And then He says, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Again, he says there's 3 things: knowledge, understanding, and wisdom, and they're different. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. How do we apply that today? Do you fear the Lord? Do I fear the Lord? We do, obviously. But fear is a motivation that will eventually fade. Can you teach someone not to be afraid of heights? You may disagree with me, but I think you can. And here's why I think you can. I was in the rescue squad and I was training at the ozone fall, tripped over a rock and fell straight down. I was at the top, it's 85 feet to the water, and I was on a rope, thankfully, but I fell. My rope caught me and I looked up and I went, the fear of heights just went away that quickly. So if I'm going to push you over the cliff, it's to get you over that fear of heights. I wouldn't do that. I'm just teasing. But I think you can learn some behavior that would cripple us otherwise. I think you can learn not to do certain things. It's just like I think you can learn to love more or hate more. You can learn to pray more. You can learn to have a better attitude. You can learn all these attributes as you can learn wisdom, right? To me, that's what verse 10 is teaching, that we need to be able to say, I've got some understanding. I've got some knowledge. With that knowledge, I've got some understanding, and that understanding breeds wisdom. And I'm always growing in those. Because the more knowledge you get, what happens? The more understanding you get. It has to be. And then more wisdom. For by me, or wisdom, For by wisdom your days will be multiplied, and years of your life will be added unto you. If you are wise for yourself, and if you scoff, you will bear it alone. What is that talking about? What's that teaching us? If you're going to be wise, you're wise for yourself. But if you're going to scoff, you bear it alone. If we choose to become wiser, it's on me, right? It's a personal decision. Is that what it's saying? Has to be. If you're wise, you are wise for yourself. You're wise because you chose to seek it out. Nobody did it for you. I would have loved for somebody to open my head up when I was 12 years old and put all the wisdom in it and close my head back up and send me on my way. Anybody else in? I'd do it right now. But really, if somebody did that, what would it be worth? Nothing, right? To me, it would just be another thing because you didn't work for it. You have to work for things, right? So the way of wisdom is chapter 9, verses 1 through 12. So let's talk about folly, verse 13. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple and knows nothing. For she sits at the door of her house on a seat by the highest places of the city, to call to those who pass by, who will go straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn and hear. And as far as him who lacks understanding, she says unto him, stolen water is sweet, and bread eaten in secret is pleasant. But he who does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of hell. Notice some very similar language. A foolish woman is clamorous. She is simple, knows nothing. For she sits at the door of her house. Folly sits at the door of the house. Wisdom sits at the highest places of the city. Doing the same thing, right? Saying the same thing. Come in and get the stolen bread. Come to me because you don't know anything. Come in now because I want to give you something in secret. Sitting at the door versus on the highest mountain. Wisdom versus folly. Verse 14, she sits at the door of her house on a seat by the highest places of the city. So, folly's at the highest places of the city. Wisdom is at the highest places of the city. And they're doing the same thing. So what is chapter 9 teaching us? We've already talked about it. I mean, it's as simple as saying, I'm going to choose wisdom, not folly.
You have two choices.
You have two choices, she said. God or the world. That's exactly right. And isn't that what chapter 9 is teaching us? What's the attitude behind wisdom being at the highest place? It's going, listen, this is what I can offer for you. Come to me. You choose that route. Folly says, you know, the secret is good. The stolen bread. It's making it easy, right? Appears to be easy. Verse 15. To call to those who pass by, who will go straight on their way. Whoever is simple, let him turn and hear. And as far as him who lacks understanding. Folly does not want you to have the understanding. Folly does not want you to work hard to get wise. Folly does not want you to do anything, basically. It would be pretty easy not to be wise. Right? Yes, sir.
I just can help understand. Is it saying,
Oh, boy.
don't be simple, or is it saying, be simple but have wisdom?
I think it's a mindset. He asked the question, is it wrong to be simple, or is it good to be simple with understanding? I think it's a mindset of simple, meaning not wanting to understand, not wanting anything better, not wanting to improve knowledge or understanding or love, not wanting just kind of the status quo. I think that's what simple there's meaning. Live for the moment. Yeah, live for the moment. So I think it's perfectly to be simple. We use the word simple probably not the way it was used in here, you know. Sometimes we say, well, that was a simple meal, but it was excellent, you know. Simple meal, maybe 2 things instead of 7, right? You know, it's a simple chicken sandwich, but it's pretty good. I think that's the mindset. Oh, sure.
But for here, we're having 2 different kinds of simple ones, which you identify a simple thing. My needs are met. I'm not a complicated person. I don't feel that I have to be out there. Whereas then we now got the simple. The other simple is someone that's taken in. And the contrast of those is what is the difference between listening to wisdom and listening to foolishness.
Exactly. So let's end at verse 18, and then we'll go on to chapter 10 next week, good Lord willing. But he does not know that the dead are there, that her guests are in the depths of hell. Folly's guest is in the depths of hell. That is a sharp contrast between wisdom is with God and in heaven, and folly being in the depths of hell. That, to me, is chapter 9 in a nutshell. Wisdom, God, folly, devil. Yes, ma'am.
I hate to say this, but folly's had hold of me a lot of times.
Yes, ma'am.
And I 57 years old, but I'm the other way now.
Good. And that shows wisdom, because she was, that's pretty personal. That's very personal. But she had the strength and understanding to say, you know, I've got some wisdom now. That's exactly the growth that chapter 9's talking about. Thank you. Good Lord willing, we'll do chapter 10 next week. Wise sayings of Solomon. 375 of them, actually.